At the Three Forks headwaters of the Missouri River, the Corps of Discovery, led by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, gazed at the Rocky Mountains. At last, they were in Shoshone Indian country, otherwise known as the Snake Indians. The bedraggled but still enthusiastic party of explorers now set out in the first week of August 1805, searching for the Native Americans they believed would trade horses needed to transport their gear over the looming rock piles, notably first the Continental Divide and today's Lemhi Pass. Friendly Indian guides were essential at this point, after Jefferson's boys had hauled heavy boats more than 2,000 miles from St. Louis. The young woman, Sacajawea, traveling with them, was just the angel to assure a success, as it turned out, because the Shoshone ahead were her family. Her abduction by enemy warriors, referred to Lewis and Clark's men as Minitaris and other Indian names, years before had placed her in the vicinity of the explorers' winter camp at Fort Mandan, North Dakota. As the northern plains summer began to slip away, Clark, with a tumor on his foot, took command of the canoes, although the water was shallower, faster, and colder. The men's feet often were swollen and torn. Flies attacked. Private Shannon was sent out to hunt and disappeared for 3 days. Lewis reported,
"We have a lame crew, including one with his arm accidentally dislocated, but fortunately well replaced."
Captain Lewis and a small party of men set out on land, up the Jefferson River, to scout. The depth of the creeks and waters shrank, leaving Clark's detail hauling canoes and supplies over rocks and pebbles. Clark narrowly avoided being bitten by rattlesnakes at least twice. Cold nights followed hot days, leaving the men exposed to the alternating conditions on the shoreline, lined with willow brush, but not much else for shelter and bed. Lewis gazed at geese flying south for the winter already on August 8th. Sacajawea was noticing familiar landmarks, including a large rock outcropping called Beaver Head. Then, an Indian on an elegant horse without saddle appeared in Lewis's spyglass on August 11. Despite Lewis's attempts to expose his own white skin under a sleeve, calling out "Tababon, Tababon," and raising trinkets and a blanket in sign of friendship, the Indian fled. By then, the party was crossing west of the Continental Divide on an Indian road, and reportedly drank water from a tributary of the Great Western Columbia River. It was today's Idaho, and Lewis's men were no longer in the official Louisiana territory. Persistence paid off. After accosting some Indian women with heads bowed in submission, expecting death or abduction, Lewis, with a flag, lured several dozen Shoshone warriors on fast horses to a parley, and thereby introduced himself to Chief Kamehameha. Smoking the pipe and removal of moccasins, the customary gestures of friendship and trust, created at least a superficial bond that let Lewis and his men lower their guards somewhat.
But before they would receive this mark of friendship, they pulled off their moccasins, a custom, as we afterwards learnt, which indicates the sacred sincerity of their professions when they smoke with a stranger. This being done, the chief lighted his pipe at the fire within the magic circle, and then retreating from it began a speech several minutes long, at the end of which he pointed the stem towards the 4 cardinal points of the heavens, beginning with the east and concluding with the north.
That tobacco was the same used by the Minnetarees, Mandans, and Arikaras. The welcome was hearty and appeared genuine, although suspicions lingered among some native villagers who feared a trap laid by enemy Blackfeet or Minnetare raiders. Various gifts were distributed to the people while children crowded around these foreign beings of the Great Spirit. Solid water, a mirror, according to one warrior, shone bright when turned to the sun, and of course everyone stared at their reflected faces in turn. Shoshones looked thin and hungry, and had few weapons. Lewis's men eventually helped them kill a deer, which they ate raw, right down to the marrow between the hooves. On one occasion, Lewis journaled that until then,
he did not think human nature ever presented itself in a shape so nearly allied to the brute creation. I viewed these poor, starved devils with pity and compassion.
Winter was coming, and the mountain tribes were then preparing to make their annual trek to the eastern plains in a hunt for buffalo. But here on the east slope of the Rockies, game and food was scarce, as the core of discovery itself would soon experience. Antelope were the Shoshone's main meat course, but these fleet creatures were very hard to catch and corner. With horses in tow later, eating the colts or young male horses purchased from the Indians became a repeated backup strategy that provided temporary nourishment to the famished men of the Corps. In the back of his own mind, Lewis hoped generosity would eventually be rewarded with the trading for horses that these people had obtained, numbering hundreds. He reassured Kamehameha that Clark, an Indian woman and black man, among other travelers, would soon show up. But there was no sign of Captain Clark's party for days, making the Shoshone even more uneasy about Lewis's always changing story. They still feared an enemy ambush. Realizing that his Indian companions were losing patience, Lewis gave up his gun to Kamehameha and ordered his men to disarm as well. An extraordinary gesture of goodwill that paid off, but in my opinion was reckless under the circumstances. Lewis himself wasn't sure where the co-captain was, while Kamehameha purportedly kept a close eye on Lewis. It was August 17 when Charbonneau and his wife, walking ahead of Clark, were surrounded by Shoshone, including one of Lewis's own men dressed as an Indian, it turned out. According to Clark, Sacajawea signaled to him that these were her people, sucking her fingers and dancing for the joyful sight. The reunion of the Corps and integration with the Shoshone villages was complete with hugs, singing, and exchanges of gifts, including seashells traded from nations further west. Another squaw broke through the celebrants and embraced Sacajawea. This woman had been captive with Sacajawea years before, but had escaped. Most remarkable of all, the chief Kamehameha and Sacajawea gazed on each other in amazement, a brother recognizing his sister. Captain Clark wrote,
"The great chief of this nation proved to be the brother of the woman with us."
Captain Lewis, the meeting of those people was really affecting. This place was called Camp Fortunate. Dialogue, gift sharing, and hunting among the combined parties of foreign white men and Indians were facilitated by the universal sign language of the plains. But now Sacajawea served as a translator. According to the Nebraska Board of Regents version of the journals, conversations would go from the captains in English to La Beach, and from him in French to Charbonneau, and then in Hidatsa to Sacajawea, who translated to Shoshone. While Lewis traded for horses, eventually 9 of them plus at least 1 mule, Clark had set out with about a dozen men and an Indian guide, old Toby, with axes and tools needed to make canoes for the circumnavigation of streams after the divide and the mountains. Lewis and the remaining men, Charbonneau and his wife, stayed in camp roughly 6 days. Lewis devoted considerable journal space describing the Shoshone culture and customs. Already the weather had turned cold. On August 21, ice 1/4 of an inch thick had crusted water that stood in vessels. Sunday, August 18, Captain Clark.
In order to relieve the party from the heavy weight of their arms, provisions, and tools, we exposed a few articles to barter for horses and soon obtained 3 very good ones, in exchange for which we gave a uniform coat, a pair of leggings, a few handkerchiefs, 3 knives, and some other small articles, the whole of which did not in the United States cost more than $20. The 4th was purchased by the men for an old checkered shirt and a pair of old leggings and a knife. The Indians seemed to be quite as well pleased as ourselves at the bargains they had made. Monday morning the 19th was covered in the grass, perfectly whitened by the frost. A beaver was caught in a trap, but we were disappointed in trying to catch trout in our net.
However, on August 20, Clark set out to explore the area at 6 in the morning, passing through a continuation of broken country. At a distance of 14 miles, the men killed a very large salmon, 2.5 feet long. Later, he returned to the lodges. There, an Indian brought him a tomahawk, which he said he had found in the grass near the lodge where Lewis had stayed on his first visit to the village. This was a tomahawk which had been missed at the time and supposed to be stolen. Clark noted,
It was, however, the only article which had been lost in our intercourse with the nation, and as even that was returned, the inference is highly honorable to the integrity of the Shoshones.
By August 26, Private John Coulter, later famed as the first, quote, mountain man, had arrived with a letter from Captain Clark addressed to Lewis. The message was an account of his peregrination and description of the river and country. Canoes were out of the question on the Salmon River. Lewis.
I now informed Sacajawea of my intended expedition overland to the great river, which lay in the plains behind the mountains, and told him that I wished to purchase 20 horses of myself and his people. He observed that the Minataris had stolen a great number of their horses this spring, but hoped his people would spare me the number I wished. I also asked a guide.
Ordway reported that Lewis got only 8 or 9 horses, all of them being basically the worst of the herd. The chief also recommended old Toby, who had already left with Captain Clark, to continue as guide. Clark himself referred to Toby in his account as a, quote, very intelligent and friendly old man. The Corps of Discovery had horses, a guide, and were finally moving over the Bitterroot Mountains to the many twisted streams and river valleys like the Salmon, the Snake, and the Flathead, all leading to the mighty Columbia River Basin and Pacific Ocean. The expedition reached Weippe Prairie September 11 to 22, 1805, occupied by 2 villages of the Pierce Nose or Nez Perce Native Americans.